All right, guys, welcome back to digital painting, and we're going to talk about our tonal study. Last class, I did a rough block in. Unfortunately, I deleted my file by accident, so I just had to go in. I had to clean my desktop. So I painted this really quickly. Hopefully, it's matching pretty good. This is about where I was at the last class. So I wanted to do a demo for you today, and I wanted to talk about going past the block-in stage where we're going to start to refine and looking at values. And I also wanted to show you a couple mistakes of things not to do, which are really common in student work. Okay, so this is where I was, right about right here. I also wanted to mention something I forgot to tell you about in the first lecture, is I like to create this little guy right here. It's a value bar. Do you see that? And if I zoom into it really quick, what's really cool is when I'm working, I can use my value bar to go back and forth. Sometimes after I have my value bar created like this, I come over and then I just smudge it across, taking the smudge tool. Okay, sort of smudge all these values together. That way I have a good representation of going from dark all the way to pure white. And then this way I can be working on something and I can just grab from this really quickly, and I don't have to worry about pulling up my color picker every time. I can move my value bar around. Okay, so that's a great little option, something you could do if you like. Okay, so first thing I want to do, let me show you a couple no-nos, a couple things that students tend to do that are big mistakes as they're working along. Okay, so again, I like to check my work to see how the values are, and that's where my rough is, okay, right now. And I have enough there that's sort of holding together, okay, as I remove part of my line. So it might be a good idea for me at this point where I can maybe drop my line down to about 80%. Now my values are actually I'm at about 70%, and my values are starting to hold the piece together a lot more. Okay, so the no-nos that I mentioned before would be doing something like this. Okay, where I have students, they come in and they start blackening some areas, and what they do is they tend to make the foreground really dark, and then they go in and they make the sky super dark. And the problem with that, you have to remember a general rule about painting. There are certain times when we use black, but pure black flattens an object. Okay, so it's going to flatten a painting, it's going to flatten figure drawing. It doesn't matter what it is. If there's pure black in it, it's not used correctly, it totally flattens down your image. So the other thing you need to remember is use your color picker to guide you, right? If we have a sky and the sky is way in the background, even if it's nighttime, it's not going to be this black. It's going to be faded down. So I can have something close to me, and technically, depending on the light source, this could be dark like this, okay? It doesn't, and it depends what it is, okay? If it's snow, it's probably not that dark because snow is white. It's going to have more sort of the local value to that might be a 3 or 4 in darkness, or maybe a 5. But if this is a big pile of manure and it's dark, you know, it's already like a dark color, in the night scene it could be dark like this, okay? So, but you just got to be careful of that. That's sort of a big no-no. Another big no-no is this, where you start coming in and you start rendering and you get caught up rendering and you spend all that time making like a little piece of wood or a window or a little wall area just filled with detail, and you're like, that is the best wall ever. Okay, and the problem is it's not. You're putting way too much detail over here. You're starting to create a lot of contrast, and that contrast is pulling our eye away from the key light source. Okay, and the key light source is right here. So our goal right now is to light this location. Think about the bounce light and what's happening. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about those no-nos. I'm going to delete those right now, and real quick, so I don't make the same mistake twice, I'm going to save my file back on the desktop. It's called Alley. Let me save. There it is. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do this on another layer for you guys so you can see the difference. This lecture is all about refining. So let me label this as refine. I like to work like this sometimes. Oops, I misspelled it. That's okay. I like to work like this sometimes because the great thing about layers is that I only want to work on, you know, have like 2 or 3 layers maximum in the way I like to work. But working on a new layer, it allows me to see the differences of what I'm doing. That way, if I go too far, I can erase and subtract from something that I've put on. Okay, so a couple of things I need to start identifying. There's little bits of detail around the center area that can be filled, and that could have lots of little value changes that are taking place. So I'm going to get in there and I'm going to start doing some of that refining. Let me show you a couple examples, right? Well, I have light casting from here and it's coming down. It's hitting this wall right here. Well, that means the back side of this wall is going to be a nice crisp shadow because it's right next to that wall. So something I could do is if I come in here with my brush and I've switched from a soft brush, I'm on black, but I usually drop down to like 4 or 5, so I'm actually painting like a lower grade. I don't want to go to pure black, do I? Because if I go to pure black, what's going to happen? It's going to flatten this object here. What I like about being on a 4 is, and then I can hit it with a couple passes, and then I can make it feel like there's a little bit of a gradient sort of happening in these little cracks. But there are little details there. There are little cracks that I have to attend to, and you can see that immediately sort of pops that out. Look at this light here. If I have light casting, that front plate's going to be lit. The back side of this is going to be a little bit darker. So sometimes I might touch 1 or 2 areas a little bit darker, and then I get it to sort of fade off a little bit. Another thing, like look at this light right here. I have the whole back side of this shadow that's going to be a little bit darker, and then I even have the underneath. This is a cylinder-shaped glass item, right? So I'm going to come over here and put a, start to create like a core shadow, and then lightly sort of come up and have that fade across. And then I could come in there in a little bit, put some highlights in there. Look at my windows. I have the interior of the windowsills there. I can come in here, and this might be a little bit darker. So what I'm doing right now in part of my refinement stage is I'm pushing and pulling some of my values that I have in my piece, because there are what I call local colors of an object that might be a little bit darker and get them refined. For example, I need to make a decision here. Do I want my shades to be lighter or the inside of the room to be darker or lighter? So in this case, I might go for the shades being a little bit lighter. So I'm going to darken a little bit of that windowsill right there where the rest of the window is. Okay. Like so. So building up like this and doing these little samples are a great way to start really developing your piece. I'm going to have a shadow casting from that light source. So if I wanted to, I could almost draw a straight line, and I could figure out, if you want to use your lasso tool for something like this, that's totally fine. So if I were to use the lasso tool, I could say I'm going to have a shadow that's going to cast down here. It's going to go like about right here, and it's going to sort of wrap around right there. Okay? And there it is. So my shadow is going to fit in there. I like to hide the ant lines. Okay, that way I can now come in here real quick, and I could just sort of stroke across there, and I could see how it's developing. There, now I have a little bit of a shadow that's coming down from that light source. Okay, so if that has a shadow, what else is going to have a shadow? This guy's going to have a little shadow. I'm going to have a little shadow that's going to come off the base here. Oops. Let me start over. There we go. Sorry, my pen is not acting right. Usually I would, you know what, forget that. It keeps selecting without me wanting to select that area. So I would rather just paint it in. So I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow here that's casting down. This is going to cast down a little bit here. And then after that, I'm going to have the little wooden, the round part there might be casting as well. Okay, those are some little details. Other little details that are happening in here. Look at underneath the wood. Every one of these little wood pylons has an edge to it. The edge is facing down away from the light. So I could come in here. This is where I might put my brush at, sort of a darker gray like this and go at 100%, because I just want to be able to touch with my pen and just go right across the edge of that wood like that. So I'm going to do that for a bunch of these really fast. Now obviously, got to think about this. The stripes that are closer to me, the little ends are going to be a little bit lighter, and as they recede up here, they're going to be darker, right? Because it's out of the light. So what I might do in this particular case is as I get up, let me do these real quick here. I should have done this on another layer, because then I could have easily selected them and then drew them in. Or excuse me, selected them and then with levels darken them in a little bit. So let me get a couple more of these in. I'll just do it manually instead. All right. So what's happening now? What's happening there? Exactly, because I have a gradient that's happening there. So the gradient's changing, and so this color that was working here that was dark is now too light right there, because my gradient value when I brushed on and blocked in that wall has changed. So I need to hit Command Z, and then that's where I might need to come in here. I can get that shadow in there a little bit, get that guy in. Okay. But then right in here, I need to switch to a much darker value. So here's where I might jump into pure black and then drop down to a 30 or 40% grade, because then as I stroke along, I'm darkening that as I go, like so. Okay. That's important for me to get those little values. So even I'm way back over here on the side of the house, I'm going to have little value changes. I'm going to be able to see those differences. That's the refinement. Those are the little details. These pipes coming out of the wall right here, right? They might be like a conduit pipe or a gray pipe that's a little bit darker value. So I can come over here. I'm going to go over them. And by doing that, that's going to get those guys to pop as well. Then I can come back and put some highlights on them. I have a little arm coming off of here. Okay? I have this pipe itself that connects into here. These are the little details that make your piece sort of come alive. And to make this top piece a little bit darker right there, because there's going to be less light hitting it. Okay, like that. Put a little bit of a shadow maybe in there, coming over. So a little note, I mentioned this in the last lecture, little bits of gradations that happen. Little gradients going from dark to light really quick always catch the eye's attention. So where I could do something like that would be like right here, where it's maybe a little bit darker in there. It's a little dark and then it fades off and I have a little gradient, goes from dark to light. If I come here under this pole right here, it gets a little bit darker and then it fades off really quickly. A little bit darker, fades off. And those little bits, after that pole drops down, it's dropping away from the light now. So I might go in there and make that a little bit darker and then just sort of just go and fade that off. Okay. So if you haven't done what I just did there, just press R on your keyboard and you can rotate your canvas. So you can get the stroke of your hand to work better. We tend to stroke like this, and so if your painting isn't working, and then when you're done, just hit R, hold down Shift, and it'll lock right back into place. Okay. All right. Even in this house right here now, I'm going to come in here. It might be a little bit darker in the back, right? Absolutely. Because there's no lights on in that room. It's going to be, might be actually quite a bit darker. So I'm going to go down to about 3, lightly sort of work up and get some of that darkness to fade into there. Not too dark though. What happens if I make that like a solid black? It's going to flatten it. It won't look right. Okay. So now that I did that window, these little details, now look at the difference. Look at how that window reads and this window is just blah. There's nothing there. So coming in and putting those little details on here now is going to be really important too. So let me do that really quick. These are our refinements. It's not going to be as bright back here because this is out of the picture, but still. Might just have a lighter shadow on this guy. Okay, I have the window. That's something I didn't catch right there. Is look at the window edge. The window pops out of the wall there. Do you see that? So I need to get in there and darken that up too. That'll be real noticeable. Get a little darker gradient up here. So then it fades sort of down. Do the same thing on this guy here. Now, what I'm going to do is just fill in, since there's no blinds or anything, and this is away from like our key area of interest, I'm just going to put a real just base coat and make that just sort of fade off into the back there. I'm not going to go in and render out all that snow right there. Don't need to. Maybe that, could put a couple little, again, I like doing the gradient thing. Sometimes I just pick up these little reflections that happen in real life and darks We'll get to that in a minute though. Part of our refinement stage, after we refine a little bit, our next stage is going to be putting some texture in here. It really gets the piece to pop. Okay, so let's see. Let's take a look at where else. You know what? I never did these grates right here. So let's come over here and just sort of get the back side. Oop, that's way too dark there. I don't need it to be. Okay, so I have that little grate. Look, I got the back of this little wall. I don't know what that is, little faucet thingy hanging in the back there, coming off of there. There's going to be a shadow coming off of that. Let me see if I can lightly come in here. It's going to draw from that light source and imagine that this might come off. And actually, this is a trick one for my prospective students, because we'll be talking about this soon. When the shadow casts in this direction from the light source, it's then going to follow the contour of the snow. And the snow is curving. It's not going to go straight. It's going to automatically go like this. Go along part of the... Uh-oh, that's what I hate about this stupid selection tool. Let me do free lasso. So the shadow is going to come like this, and it's going to curve along there and be something more like this. That makes sense? It's going to hit that surface and go across. Let me hide that, and as I block in that shadow, I'm just going to try to do it really sort of soft. Because then when it gets down here, it's going to really start. Now I'm going to go down to like 1. It's going to like lightly fade into part of that snow there like that, because it's much further away from the light source. And I'll probably see it. That's the benefit of you guys doing those little light studies that we were talking about, right? Oops. Deselect. Okay, I'm going to leave that for right there. Let's see, what other areas can I define? I have this area back in here, or I can back there. If I close my hands together and bring them together, it gets dark between my hands, and that's because there's not much light happening. So this box is right next to that wall. So because of that, I can come over here. Let's grab a darker value, and I'm just going to sort of lightly, I'm hitting number 3 on my keyboard, okay? I'm just going to sort of stroke down and lightly come forward. We're getting that value. Go from dark to light. Get that to sort of come out there really lightly. And if I really want to push that, because this is the center of interest right here in terms of staging, I can really get down to almost like a pure black. And let me go to like 20. And just like on the top here, I'm just going to get a little bit of almost close to pure black, just gradating down. So that really is going to keep my eye focused in that little area. Okay, and the same thing here with my box. Remember, I think I did this in the last demo. I might come up here on the top and get this to be a little bit darker, and then fade that down. Get that in here. Okay, so refinement, my good old buddy, friend Michael Spooner, when I used to do this stuff and we're working on shows, one of the comments that Michael always made is that you are pushing and pulling of shapes. You're thinking about how to push and pull something. So, you know, if I want to push something down like this, I want to push the inside of that box down, I need to come in and I need to basically darken the inside of that box. It's that simple. So if I darken something up, it's going to push it down. And when I lighten something, it's going to pull it forward. So that's the pushing and pulling of shapes. I like that terminology a lot because it's something you have to get used to, because a lot of times when we're blocking stuff in, we get things that are really rough and we purposely go past a certain marker or a point where we didn't mean to, you know, push something down too far or pull it too far, and then we have to go back and adjust it. Okay, I'm not getting the value that I wanted, so I'm going to have to come back in here. There, I'm at the value. I think my brush is just too low. Yeah, it was. There you go. So I'm just lightly, I'm at 30% opacity, and I'm just sort of streaking across. Some of you guys were afraid to learn how to do this with a brush, this sort of gradient. You just have to get the brush at a low setting, and you just lightly sort of go across. So now I have that box darker. The one thing I didn't do on here, I'm going to do it really quick with my selection or my brush that I didn't fill. I have lines on that mattress, right? So I can create some variance in the pattern that are happening. Some of you that are doing the other piece, the 7-Eleven, that logo, if you look at the logo, it's green with orange and something else. So you should take that green and you should fill that in, should be a darker value, and get that to push. That's linear detail on something that's going to, those shapes are going to need to be pushed and pulled. So I'm going to do that right now on the mattress. I'm going to come in here and just grab this, pretend that these center pieces here are going to come out and they're going to fade and get a little bit lighter. So let me get this one here. Let me get that next little stripe. That guy's right in there. He's a little bit smaller. Okay. Okay. So I look at that and I'm like, you know, maybe I got the mattress a little too dark in the back there. So what I might do is come in here then and just take gray and lightly go over that. Dull that down just a little bit so it's not too, okay. Let me lightly go over this and sort of blend these together so I don't see the strokes as much in there. It's up to you, you don't have to do that, but this is facing away from the light, so I might come in here and just put a couple little value tips. See, right now that's all the same value. Okay, it's not going to work being all the same value. I have to get in here and figure out a way to get this to pop a little bit more, especially this being right by the light there. That's key, and it's also a directional element that's pointing me into the direction of the composition there. So I'm going to come in and sort of fade this off. Again, try to get a little bit darker on the tip there, and then just sort of lightly using my brush get that gradient to start happening. There we go. Okay. Talked about how I might have light casting downward like this because light's hitting from there, that top of the box. So I'm going to darken that up. And the back side in here, that guy's going to get pretty dark back there. There's not much light back in there, is there? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start to darken a couple little spots. Not too dark. If I get too dark, I'm going to create a huge area of contrast, and it's going to pull me away from my areas of interest. And I don't want that to happen. Okay. Darken up my tire a little bit. And then I'm going to come over and just darken the inside of that tire a little bit more. Okay. All right, so let me zoom back out. I was worried I got a little bit too much on my box, but it's not too bad. Okay. Now I'm going to come in with my values and sort of go over and zoom back in, and I want to darken a couple of these. Like I never finished darkening this, the underside of those little beams. Okay, these are the little details that exist in my piece that are going to really get it to sort of separate. What's really cool, the more I get this to work now, the more it's going to work when I take off my line layer, and the better it's going to read. And I haven't even gotten to my highlight, my detail phase yet. I'm just refining. My detail phase is when I come in with little highlights and little textures and so on, and then it starts to become really appealing to the viewer. Okay? Let me see where else. Let me zoom out for a minute. So this is a good point where two things I like to do. One, I've been painting now I don't know, what am I, I'm 24 minutes into this, refining. This is where I like to walk away for a little bit, take a break, you know, rest my eyes. But look at the difference when I take off the line drawing. You see how it's holding together? The values are underneath and they're holding it together. This is really important because after 2 assignments from now, we're going to be doing this where we're not going to be using line anymore. I'm going to have you guys be painting stuff by using selections and getting visual shapes to read, and we're not going to rely on line. We're going to be turning objects in form by using light, having a light side, dark side, and sort of, you know, a medium side. Okay, so the only concern I have right now is the center of my box is getting a little dark, but that's okay. I'm going to leave it because it's by the area of contrast. Okay, and just real quick, let's look at the difference. Let me turn off the refinement layer of what I've done. Right, you see that? That's where I was. And see how I'm refining those shapes and values down, pulling them up. That's huge for me to keep developing that in there. So the next step that I would do after this, and maybe I'll just keep going in this demo, is I would go in there and I would start to put a couple more highlights to get my eye to look. And then I would go in there and I would start peppering some textures around. And textures are great because you can do textures on separate layers, and they add a lot of information to your scene, and they're details. So if I get the detail around this area right here, okay, around that wall, maybe in the back here, those little details are really going to get the scene to sort of come alive and pop. Okay, so maybe we'll do that where we'll just keep working here. So let me create another layer. I'm going to put this above my refinement layer right here. Okay, and I'm going to label this. Actually, I'm going to label this refinement highs. I don't like having too many layers, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to commit that layer into my values right now, so it's all sort of one tonal. Okay, and then I want to save this to look at the difference of when we started today. Okay, so in terms of highlights, there's a couple ways we can do highlights. It's really, really easy to get carried away with highlights because highlights are like a magical power. Right? And you come in here and you go like this, you're like, yeah, I know the light's going to hit that edge and that snow, and I know right here, oh, it's coming alive. It's so beautiful, right? And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're coming in and you're putting highlights on like every single corner of snow and all over the place, and then that kills it. So you sort of have to choose your highlights wisely. If you put too many highlights in, you're going to flatten part of your objects, okay? So since I'm so close to the lights here, I'm going to hit a couple key areas. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to put a nice little highlight that's hitting that edge. Then it's sort of maybe like lightly fading up a little bit. Okay. Now I just noticed. I don't know how that happened. I have this big white blot there. And I didn't mean to do that. And I don't know what layer that's on. So that's on this layer here. I think that was from the snow we must have done. So now I can just select that real quick and come back in with my eraser. And I can just brush, just paint over it, so it's not there anymore. Okay, and same thing with that guy. That was sort of an accident too. Okay. All right. Let me zoom back out. Just come back out here. A couple other highlights that I'm going to have hitting this area here on the window. But I'm going to do those in a minute. I'm going to fake, because if I do those too rich, painting them on, they'll be too overpowering, and I don't want them to be too overwhelming right now. I might have bounce light. I'm going to have light that's going to hit here that's going to come back up at that windowsill right there. So watch, if I turn this over, let me zoom back out. It got too close in there. I go back to brush. If I have my brush down about 10%, I'm going to have a little bit of highlight coming up right under here, maybe 20%. Oh, that's why I'm not on white anymore. You know, some highlight hitting under that edge, right there, right here, even right here. Also, maybe along a little bit of the curtain edges. All right, not too much, just a little. Now shadows too. Look, I'm going to come over here, darken a little bit of that shadow right under that snow. You see that right there? And that'll really get that to pop because the light, that tip is closest to the light. So I'm going to darken that up and then just let it fade off. Back there, it'll fade off, okay? Uh-oh, I'm drawing on the wrong layer. That's okay. Let me go back to refinement. Okay, let's go back to refine highs. Same thing in here, a little bit on that snow. Fades off, okay. Let's come over here. I'm going to have a nice highlight right there on that glass surface. So I'm going to start off and just make this really bright so it keeps your eye in that area. So I'm going to get really small here and just sort of go like this. Uh-oh, why is it not coming out so bright? And there might be another second one sort of over here a little bit. Sort of fades off. Okay. A little too dark. That's going to cast a little shadow as well. Okay. All right, so now let me keep the refinement going. I'm going to do this. Look at that. See that? How that pops a little bit there? Because they have all that little TLC. If I turn off the line layer, look at that. See all that TLC in that little guy? Keeps my eye focused on here. So if I have that here and I have a little here on this and over here and on the wall, then we're talking business. Now it's going to start to all sort of come together and I have like 3 little areas my eyes will be bouncing around and will be staying in my composition. I can even come over here now and drop down from 70%. And I can start going down. Look, now I'm at 30% of line drawing. I'll go to 44. So it's holding together. I have enough tone in there that's really starting to work. Okay. So let's put on some highlights right here. I think I showed you guys for this how I would do this. It's hard to get in there and paint sometimes really soft, crisp highlights. A way to do that is I just go to brush on a separate layer. I go to like 100%. I'm going to start with like a pure white right here. And I just hold shift. And I just come in here like this and I go across. Then I'm just going to hold shift and just lightly sort of touch my screen. Then I'll drop down to about a 40. Like that. Okay, and I did that on a separate layer. Here, let me take my marquee and delete that little top part right there. There it goes. So now I have a nice crisp little highlight right there. Do you see that? And I could bring that over. Look, I'm just going to turn it. And I'm going to put it right over on top of that railing right there. Do you see how that just fit in there perfect? And then I'm going to save myself time. I'm going to duplicate that highlight. Then I'm going to bring the other one over here and put it right up on the top there. Get it so it's in the right position. Okay, so now I have the railings really starting to pop. And look, I'm going to duplicate that guy then. Might bring it forward. There might be another little highlight down here on the edge right there. And then I'm going to come back to erase, and I'm going to erase all this extra overspray that's right in there. Okay. See another little spot. So again, here's a great thing about duplicating all your layers, right? Here, let me go back to this main one. I'm going to duplicate this guy now. Let me bring him over here. Turn him this way. This is how I get great light reflections on windows. Is I'm going to take this guy and duplicate him a couple times now. I don't want to get him confused with my other layers because I want to commit to all those. So I'm going to commit those into refine. Oops. So I'm going to come back to this one and I'm going to duplicate him a couple times. Duplicate. Okay, and now I bring him a little bit more like that. Duplicate him again. I don't want them all to be the same, brightness. So now I'm gonna lower one of those down a little bit, like so, 44%. So I have those three right there. Watch, I just come over here, I take my marquee, I'm gonna delete the lower section, like that. And then what I can do is I can just put that right up on the window like that. And you know what? I did make a mistake. They're all evenly spaced. That's a big no-no. Too busy talking, not paying attention. So let me do that again. Okay, V. There it goes. That's sort of cool like that. So they're not evenly spaced, right? Deselect, and then I can put that over on the window like that. Get it right in about there. Let me see if I can get a little bit more like so. And then what's cool is now I just erase where it's not hitting. So it's not hitting that area. It's not hitting in the middle. It's not hitting right in here. And then you can use erase to get some of the fade off to be a little bit different. Before I do that, let me copy and paste. Okay. So I might, copy paste, there it is. And move that one down there a little bit like so. And then if I come into erase, okay, now I'm going to merge those two layers together so it's all window highlights, right? Those are too bright, so I either need to drop the opacity down or erase them a little bit. So if I come into erase and go to like 20% and then lightly come across, so I'm going to lightly erase, and I can just eyeball it and make sure the highlight's looking correct. Go to 100%, it's overlapping the wood right there. There we go. And those little details really add a lot. Okay. Let's keep erase back at about 20. Fade it here a little bit, so it was a little bright right in there. Okay. So, and what I had, I like what I had there. It adds a little bit more, and you know what? I might just take that layer now. Let's duplicate them. Let me bring it over here. And that's still way bright. The window's much further away, but here I can just drop opacity. See, I can just make it really light, just like that. That way it looks like there's a little bit of something there. It's just separating the plane change on the window. It doesn't make it like it's all just solid gray, That's just fine. So now I'm going to take all those layers, let's merge them together. Okay. And if let me just zoom back in there a little bit. You can see I've been refining in here and in here. And it's really starting to come together because look at this when I turn that layer off. Okay, that's what I just did. Getting the little highlights, little shadows in there, starting to come together. And if I merge all that together into one, that's where we were with our roughen, and that's how we're sort of refining it up now. Okay, so let me do the texture real quick and then we'll end the demo. So on the texture, that's a great thing about obviously create new layer, right? Take a look at some of your brushes. I gave you guys a bunch of different brushes here. Some that I've collected and gathered from different students and stuff. Scroll down and you could find anything that looks like it has some type of a good texture pattern to it. A great way to look at your brushes too, this is how I like to pick them, but then if I come over here and I look at like stroke thumbnail, see now I can see how the texture of the brush is affecting. So this is a really great way. A lot of times when I'm working I just do this because look, these aren't going to really have much of a texture, but look at these down here. Okay, some of these look great. Look at that guy right there. Very sort of scratchy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to like a darker value. Okay, and I'm just going to come across with this and see what happens. I don't know what the power of this brush is going to be at 100% or at 1%. So I'm going to see what happens if I just sort of use it. Well, that's not good. That's snow. Okay, but that just gave me an idea. What if I have it at like 1%? Could I come in here and do this? Could I go over parts of my snow? See that? That texture might add a little bit of, if you've ever been around snow, snow has little highlights, it gets dirty. When I lived in Chicago, we would get man, our perfect white snow would end up looking like gray mush after a while. Okay, so I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to erase some of this. Okay, so that definitely gives me a little bit of a snow feel. Okay, let me call this my texture layer. So now I'm going to come in here again. I want to see what happens if I hit a couple little spots over here. If I come back in here, hit a couple of highlights there, maybe a couple little over here. Texture is important because it allows your eyes to see little subtle changes, okay? So that was one version of the texture. Let me switch. Let's go a little bit darker and see what happens. I'm going to click another layer above this. Let's go back to brush. I'm going to scroll down and find something there. That's pretty cool. That's scratchy. So is that guy right there. All right. So what I just did, I'm doing very lightly, sort of coming across the base of that wall. Do you see that? And it's putting some like little scratchy texture on the wall, and it makes the wall start to come alive a little bit. I hate looking up here because it's so much lighter. It doesn't represent what's on my scene, what's on my TV here, but when you watch the demo, you'll see the difference. So here, look, I might even just do this to get that weathered feel, like, you know, maybe right under that layer of wood, right? Water's been dripping and there's like little bits of dirtiness and grime. We're in an alleyway, right? So can't do this first, even though you want to. You don't want to come in and start putting that texture in first. You want to save that texture for the end. It's important. Okay, if you do it first and your values aren't right, it's going to look crappy. It's not going to look right at all. Okay, so once I get that texture layer in there like that, see, it really, look at the difference. What it did to that wall. It really made that wall pop, and it gave it a lot more information. Okay, gosh, it's so much lighter up there, but maybe it's the angle I'm looking at it too. So again, all the brushes I gave you, go along and look at some of them. And if you see what, I mean, like I look at some of these, those are some of the paint brushes. Some of these brushes, these like little spatter ones right here, that's the airbrush tool. That could really do a great job with making cardboard come together. Those reliefs and other patterns, right? This one's really cool. I've used this guy before. Sort of a thick, heavy brush. That can be great for like sidewalks. Okay, so here, let me try that. Let me merge those two together. The texture, let me create another layer up above. And I'm going to come over right now. Watch, I'm just going to sort of streak across here. And I'll come back and I'll erase some of it. Any of the overspray I have that I don't like. Okay. I don't want to texture everything, but now here's the benefit of coming in with the eraser and going into like 10%. Actually start off like 20 or 30. See, I'm just lightly erasing it. In fact, I'm just going to go like this, and I'm just going to drop it down like that. Drop down the opacity of that layer, and then erase a little bit more on it. You see how that added a little bit more detail to the street? It broke it up a little bit, the sidewalk and so on. Okay, so coming in sort of a last phase with those brushes, it's a great approach because it allows you to really start getting, look at the difference. It made that wall come alive, and it made the ground come alive now. So the first thing is when I get rid of my line, the values are holding the piece together, which is rule number 1, right? And then refining it, getting some more of those little details in there, and then coming by and sort of hitting it with a little bit of a texture pass. That's great. That's really going to get it to pop. So I might stop right here on the demo because we're 43 minutes into it, and I can try to get it rendered, okay? But now the next part, if I were to do this, I might come in. I would probably leave it alone right now. I'd fix the back wall, maybe a little bit of the sky. I'd get some highlights on the bricks. I put all my attention right here in this little circle, and I haven't given much attention back here. Not that I need tons of highlights on the left, but these are still shapes and forms that are going to be rotating with a little bit of light on them. That actually goes by pretty quickly, but I need to address, I need some value changes to start happening over here, and I haven't done that yet. Okay, that would be my next step. That'd be sort of refining and adding a little bit more detail, and then I'll probably be sort of finished up. Don't jump to the texture part yet unless you feel your values are all there. I just was aching to get into it because we're going to hit the weekend. But see, I haven't defined my values over here on the left-hand side where the tire is and all this. I would have done that first before I got to the textures, but I'm just showing you that so you can get an idea of how to really sort of build up your piece to that finished level, going from block-in to refinement, okay? All right, we'll see you next class.